Okay, are we ready to get started? Okay, Sherry O, where should I start? How about an introduction? Okay, so usually what happens inside of Adilas is in order to play, the Adilas website basically has a number of different pieces that happen, okay? If you go to the main Adilas.biz website, you'll find that there's probably about 10 or 15 little pages that you could possibly browse that are outside of the main secured environment. Inside the main secured environment, there's probably close to 1,000. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually just kind of pop in here and show you around a little bit on some light stuff. I'm going to log into as myself, and eventually what we'll do is when we start doing some training, we will actually get you guys into a little demo site and we'll just kind of play with some training. If you have multiple corporations or multiple worlds, you do have to choose which one you want to go into. I'm going to actually take you into Adilas itself and just kind of show you around. When you land inside of Adilas, you always land on what's called your home page. And your home page is actually determined by what you choose. Okay? There's a link at the top called Chooser. What it does is it basically allows you to select from multiple different interfaces. You can see that we actually have added in some custom ones as well, just to kind of play around with some different pieces of the puzzle. By default, you have 3 options. I'm going to just lightly pop into them. One, you get the custom map, which kind of shows like it's a little bit more of a graphical type interface, so you could like click on customers and actually go right to the customer homepage. Or if you click on, say, like quotes or invoices or stock units or something. Say you wanted to go to your expense receipts. You click on it. It basically takes you right to that particular page and kind of shows you what's going on. So it looks to me like just there's some simple values. There's $21,000 with some expenses. Looks like Steve was entering some gas receipts. Looks like some people were doing this and that. Like basically, you can kind of see how all the different pieces of the puzzle. We actually can go right to the documentation as far as what's going on. Here's the actual little expense that was entered in. Looks like Salida Shell Station for $23, okay? But if you wanted to, you could also just go like this and say, cool, let's actually see what this whole thing is about. What I'm doing right here is just lightly giving a light demo and just kind of showing what's going on. But here is the expense receipt number. It's number 4037. Gives me the amount, tells me who it was for, who did it, what the date was, and then it kind of goes down and says, how did we categorize that? And then how was it paid for, et cetera, et cetera. Like each thing basically becomes its own little story. And so what we do is we create objects inside of Adilas. Okay? So I'm going to just hit back again. What we were doing is that we were basically just kind of going, showing you how the different interfaces work. Another interface that we have is one that some of the people who do touchscreen a lot actually like this one because it's laid out in the exact same format. We are just barely in expense receipts. This one is sorted alphabetical, so B, C, D, E, F, etc. like that. And then it kind of has some of your main options as far as like what's available. Say you actually wanted to say, hey Brandon, what were you paid right here recently? I could go to the check payment search. Basically I can come down here and I can look for vendor and I can find my name, Brandon Moore. Oh, look, cool, I was paid $1,000 just the other day on the 18th, okay? So like, if you wanted to, you could even go like this. Hey, let's just for fun, why don't you go see everything that has the last name of Moore? Okay, this won't be just me. This might be some other different people. But here's some of this and this. Oh, looks like my virus protection was updating. I'll just close that up. But like, basically, here's some different little things. But you're able to search things all over the place. So once again, from the chooser, if you're on the My Favorites page, this one here is actually temporarily, we show it as all of these buttons. Ideally, where we'd like to go with this is so that you could build your own interface. So you're like, you know what, I only want 5 buttons or 10 buttons, and then you could actually wire them up so that it would take you exactly where you wanted to go. Say you wanted to go to the Elements of Time homepage. Basically, this is your calendaring stuff, and we will be covering these different pieces of the puzzle, but you can kind of see some of the different pieces that we have going on. Here's our date today. And so depending on your interface that you like, you can pick and choose. The last one that I'm going to show you right here is what we call the classic homepage. The classic homepage, this was actually our interface for about 6 years, and so that's why we call it the classic homepage. The cool thing about this one is specifically built off of permissions. And so it might look somewhat intimidating because it's kind of like, okay, where do I click and where do I go? Some of our power users, when they actually start really getting into the system, actually really enjoy this one because you actually have options that you don't have on some of those other pages, even though there's tons and tons of buttons. Okay. Just to kind of show you how it's built by permissions, you see this little thing that says clock in and clock out? Literally, the way that this particular permission or page works, if I click here and I go edit payees, I'm currently logged into myself, so I'll go down and find myself. I'll click on myself, and then I'll basically go to a thing called System Basics, and I'm going to find my clock in and out permission, and I'm going to just turn it off. One little click of the button, go to the bottom of the page, and update my payee. So now if I actually go chooser, and I go back to that classic home page, we won't even see the word clock in and clock out here in the list. Every single option on this page is dynamically driven according to permissions. So it could be as small as 1 permission, it could have 10 permissions, 20, up to, there's over 100 different permissions. And basically what happened, I know I'm kind of going a little bit all over the place, but how many of you are familiar with a thing called role-based permissions? What's a role-based thing?
A role-based thing is, so if you have permissions to log onto a computer, but you don't have permissions to actually change anything, that's your role. You can only be a standard user, you can't do anything more than that.
Okay, so a role-based permission, exactly, and there's Paul, correct?
James.
James, okay. James, so a role-based permission, you have smaller amounts of permissions, say 5 or 10, and you're like, oh, you're sales, oh, you're a counter person, oh, you're admin, oh, you're accounting, oh, you're managerial or whatever, oh, you're back-end web. Like, those are role-based, okay? What happened was, as Adilas, when we originally started, we started with a role-based system. We outgrew that in a couple years because what happened was is we had somebody who was a manager who gave them manager permissions, but in a different environment they needed to actually be at the sales level because they were not the manager of that particular entity. So it got really hard to be like, okay, you're manager over here, but you're only sales over here. And so it ended up kind of breaking that model. And so they were, forget it. Forget the role-based thing. We're going to go straight to permissions. And then it's like, you get this one, this one, this one, and you get this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one over here in this other permission or corporation. And so we kind of broke that role model. We have no problem breaking models. The word break is not a problem. That actually consider progress, okay? The thing that is the bad word is a thing called eventually. Because it takes a little bit of time, and that seems to be the taboo word. Anyway, I just wanted to kind of lightly show you a couple of these small interfaces. At any point in time, once you've chosen an interface, you can click on the word any logo, and it'll take you back to your home page, and then you're able to kind of dance and play from there. Some of the other things that are along the tops of the page, just to kind of lightly introduce them, is this little thing is called the quick search right here. And we actually need to give David kind of credit for the quick search. He's actually the one who created it. There are 2 different versions of the quick search. This small version that you can see right here that has the drop-down list, say for instance expense receipt, and what were we on, 4,033 or something like that?
37, I think.
37.
Okay, anyway, we'll go to this one. Okay, this one was for Jared Moore doing some video editing for 500 bucks. Okay, basically this quick search, what David had to do was he was constantly putting in new photo gallery items. Okay, so he'd come to an expense, he'd click on Add Edit Photos, he'd hit Browse, add the documentation, and go back. What happened was is he kept having to go to the home page. Here's what the old way it used to look like. This is where we actually got the version of the quick search. From the classic home page, it was the only spot that it was. And so what David would do is he would enter an expense, and then he would constantly be coming back home so that he could jump to the next one. And so David said, can you possibly put that on the top of every page or put it somewhere? And we're like, oh, that's a great idea. And so now if you go to any page, you literally have tons and tons of options. Watch this. Say you wanted to go to, let's just find what I have in my items. Here's a receipt printer and some paper. Guess what? I have the quick search now on top of every single page. So instead of having to go back home, I can now do it wherever I need to. This is actually one of the transports, if you will, that helps you get around Adilas. I'm going to lightly introduce a new graphic right now. It'll kind of show you what happens, okay? We are still working on this particular one, and you can see that there's a number of different pieces kind of around the outside of this particular puzzle. What I wanted to show you is this is a marker. Say we were actually dealing in expense receipts right here. Well, what happened was I did a search, and so I ended up in parts right over here. I was doing a search, and I just showed you those printable things. But by using the quick search, I could immediately jump out into expense receipts and go to 4033. You could kind of transfer yourself wherever you needed to go according to the quick search. So that's what kind of makes it fun as far as those different pieces of the puzzle. What I'd like to do for just a quick second is actually ask you guys how you use the quick search, and then we'll see if we can kind of demonstrate that. Cherio, I'm currently in Adilas right now. How do you use the quick search? Just in general.
How do I use it?
Yeah, what's one of the ways you use a quick search?
I'm infamous using a quick search for, like, searching advanced expense receipts, things like that.
So watch this, okay? Oops, my bad. Expense receipt. There's a keyword called ADV, which is short for advanced. Hit enter. I'm right here into the advanced expense receipt search. Say I wanted to see everything that was done as an ACH payment for the last little, or even just in general, and go search it. I want to see all my ACH stuff. Okay, $33,000 worth of stuff through ACH payments, depending on what it was for. If you wanted to filter it, basically you can get around the system incredibly fast once you do it. Say you wanted to see a vendor say, hey, let's go check out one called New Tech, and I'll just put a part of it in there and say, go search that. Boom, $30,000 worth of this towards a company called New Tech. We use New Tech as our hosting solution as far as where we buy servers and different things from them, but like basically you are able to search your stuff very, very quick. Cherio, what's another way that you potentially use your quick search?
You can look up your vendors if you so choose.
Okay, great. So say I wanted to actually find the same vendor, New Tech. Here it is. Recent receipts, recent POs. You know, which payments have actually been made to them. What do I owe them? Do I want to create a new expense receipt? That's a quick way to bounce around the system. What virtually happened right there is I was right here, okay? We were looking at some advanced expense receipts, and I said, quick search, go search me a vendor. And so I can play here. You literally are able to bounce around these different things all over the place. Now, sometimes people are like, okay, so what can I put in these things? If you like to read, any page you are on has a help file. If you click on help, it'll be relative to the one that you're actually on. So I currently was on the search receipt payee results page, but there's a link right here that says the Adilas quick search help. If you go to this particular page, this will actually show you the two different versions, the mini version and the full version, kind of where we started. Here's that same little graphic right here as far as like from the hub out to the home pages, out to the special searches, out to the actual pieces of the puzzle. This particular one was one of our first little graphics to kind of explain that thing. And then it goes down and it says, okay, balance sheets. If you want to search balance sheets, you can do home, advanced, last, numeric. Like I'm just kind of bouncing around here, but it shows you some of the different pieces of the puzzle. Barcodes, checks, customers, deposits, elements of time, expense receipts, flex grids, invoices, part numbers, your POs, your quotes, your recipe and builds, your stock units. This is actually where we started inside of Adilas when we were actually doing the original system, was in stock units, and it's basically considered the big ticket items, the vehicles and the trailers and stuff like that. That's why we created it, and then eventually David, when he was entering expenses, is like, man, I really wish I could get back there quicker, and that's why we kind of created that quick search piece, okay? Vendors, VIN numbers, all that kind of stuff.
Brandon, can you go over the, I know there's only a handful of them, just the keywords you can put in the search, like advanced, home,
Correct.
all.
So what let's do, absolutely, let's do this right here. Let's go to time, elements of time, just for fun. We'll just bounce it to a new spot. And you mentioned new. So if I hit a keyword new and I hit go, basically it's like, cool, add, edit a new piece of time. So I can send, what are we doing? We're in a multi-day training class. Continue. Click. And then I'm basically right into that type of a scenario, okay? Another piece that you can do is one called last. Okay? This is a keyword. And so what it does is it's the last one that you entered, not that's entered into the system, but the last one that I physically entered. So if I hit go right here, it actually took me to a cold fusion training class that we were doing for some of our interns. It looks like the date was for 10/14, and this is its ID number. Okay, this ID number is a magic number that you can do as well. Most everything has some sort of a value, a numeric value. That's very similar to how we have Mick and Joe and David and stuff like this. Well, inside of the system, what you have is you have invoice 12, elements of time 500, deposit 7,000. Okay, they always have. That's kind of how you talk to the different pieces inside of the system. They have a name. So watch this. If I were right here and I said, what is time 500? Let's go see it. Basically, we're going to pop right into this particular thing. This looks like a thing that we are trying to do. Looks to me like as we go down, Brandon Moore, we created this one. This looks like some ideas and some things that we wanted to do. We added a whole bunch of extra notes in this way. Okay. Looks like we were talking about transitional invoices, which is kind of almost like this quasi-state. It's between a quote and an invoice. It's kind of like a work order or something that's sort of in progress, but we don't really want it to show up on our books, but we start wanting to gather some pieces. That's what we call a transitional invoice. But literally, you could pop into anything. I bet you right now inside of this particular company, it looked like the higher numbers were in the 700. Shannon, give me a random number. We're just going to pop into it.
692.
692. 692. Enter. Okay. Okay. This looks like a particular thing for Jane Medicals, which is a company out of Denver here. It looks like Steve was setting up a client. Looks like he was actually kind of just lightly monitoring some of the different pieces of what was going on. Okay. But like literally, once you know its ID number, you can pop right into it. Anything, expenses, invoices, just for fun. Why don't we go to invoice, we'll just for fun, let's go invoice 3,000. What do we got? Denver Car Wash, right here out of Denver, okay? Basically, it looks like they paid a little bit right here for using the service, okay? And it looks like it was on 7/18. It was done through a credit card, and here's the transaction ID number, et cetera, what was going on. Any documentation you need, you can actually get to at any point. That quick search is your vehicle to get around the system. And if you need to, once again, from any page, you go Help, Adilas Quick Search Help, and you go down to it so you can figure out the different pieces of the puzzle. Okay, we were also talking just briefly on some of the other keywords. So let's go like this for just a second. We were on time. Another huge keyword is home. You go home, it'll actually take you to that particular home page. Very, very important. Another one is advanced, ADV. It'll take you to the advanced time search, okay, or the advanced expense receipt search, or whatever. Those are kind of some very, very common pieces of the puzzle as far as which ones you're able to do. Time happens to have multiple ones. This happens to be a keyword for time. What's going on today? Here's what I have going on today, okay? If I wanted to see what was going on tomorrow, what's going on tomorrow? Like here's what I have going on tomorrow. Like there are special keywords that you can do for any particular piece of the puzzle. If you knew a specific date, and let's actually, just for fun, let's do 10, and what's going to be, today is the 22nd. Let's do on 10/24. What do we have going on? Here's what we have going on 10/24, okay? Different little pieces of the puzzle. At any point in time, you can bounce all around Adilas. If you want to follow a path, you can start following that path. But one of the key features is once you learn how to bounce around, it becomes very fun and very good in that type of a way. Awesome. So we're just kind of introducing this top line. We talked about home. It gets you back to the one that you chose as your screen. Okay? If you don't like these interfaces and you needed a different one or a new one, you literally can go like this, chooser. Here's what we're going to be doing in the future. We're going to add another little link that says, would you like to see all of the ones that are available that we have released? And so then you'll be able to choose, and you can pick and choose. So you can, once you set it as your default, if I hit home, this is now my screen. Okay? So anywhere where I go, say I wanted to go say, hey, what do I have under some of my client logs? Okay? There's pages and pages and pages of different little logs for different little clients. The mixing bowl. Let's go actually into this entry. Here's all the logged entries that I have for the mixing bowl. Just different little things that are going on. This right here looks like Sherry calling to talk to see if we could do the little video shoot that I was telling you about. And guess who logged it? This is Sherry O. Okay, that's great. So once again, if I click home now, you'll notice that my screen becomes the piece that I have or that I set as my default or landing spot. So what that does in a basic way is right here, you get to choose what your landing spot is. And then once you determine that, you're able to just kind of bounce all around. This right here will actually eventually end up being an interface as well. So if you wanted to go to invoices, invoice homepage, any of the advanced searches or options or reports, click out here and you can actually get to the details of those type of things. These will all be kind of little different touchscreen type interfaces or different pieces of the puzzle. I don't know if that's very clear from where you're at or anything, but we'll make it good so it'll look good on your screens, okay? Awesome.